Here I am with Susan Halla, owner of Make It Mid-Century. And you've been someone that I've turned to over the years on the internet for both good products, but also great advice on how to really keep the mid-century charm alive in your home and in one's home. And now you're about to start that journey again because just before we started recording, you told me that you are about to close on a new, I assume, a new mid-century house. Tell me
Yes,
about
it
this.
is. So I currently live in a mid-century house in St. Louis, and it has a lot of the original features and all of the good stuff, the original metal cabinets and tile, which I've been regrouting tile all weekend. But it's time for us to move, and so we are moving cross country to Philadelphia, and we found an even more mid-century house. It's not, we actually had a contract, or we actually had an offer in on a house in Chicago. We were looking in multiple places around the country. And one thing my husband said about it, he's like, I'm not going to be able to wear my sweatpants around here because it was like high-end mid-century.
All glass.
And for whatever for whatever reason, if it was the universe telling us it wasn't the right place, this other house in Philadelphia popped up, and we still hadn't heard anything, any kind of like negotiations on this offer we'd put in on this house in Chicago when the house in Philadelphia popped up. And we saw it and we both looked at each other and we're like, we need to withdraw our offer on the house in Chicago because this one just feels more us. Because I love high style, high end mid century, don't get me wrong, but kind of what I really groove on is more of the everyday person's mid-century, which tends to be have a little more kitsch to it, have a
Yeah.
little more like less, more where you can wear your sweatpants around the house.
Yeah.
So that's where we're moving, but it has like wonderful, like weird roof line, and it has so many of the original features. It's a 3.5 bath house, and 2 of the full baths are pink.
Oh,
So it's
pink
all
bathroom dream.
original.
Oh, that's great.
Yes. And even original, there's this fantastic wallpaper, which I can't exactly describe, except it's like 1960s people on horseback, but not like I can't even describe it exactly because it almost reminds me of like wise men from Christmas kind of look. It's weird. I can't describe it. But is it staying? Oh yeah, it's
Oh, what a
staying.
feature. Oh, this is so exciting. So, I
So
mean, all right, I have so many questions. Let's go in order. So, you're moving without a specific destination in mind. That's a really interesting way to relocate yourself. And without prying into your personal life too much, what was the impetus to change from one house to another without saying like we're going to a specific place?
well, both of my husband and I work from home.
Right.
And so because my business is currently in my home and will continue to be in my home, so we needed to find a place that was big enough for that too. So we could move anywhere. We without trying to get you shamed off the internet or whatever, it was for political reasons that we had to get out of where we are. Taxation without representation. It's a long story. So we looked in many different places that we really liked, but that politically aligned with our beliefs. And
Yeah,
so we were looking in Chicago, upstate New York, Delaware, and the Philadelphia area.
got
And
it.
it so happens that both of my kids live in Philadelphia. One of them's in college right now in Philadelphia. And so it's great because they're there, but it's also that that we know that area a lot better, having visited them a lot. So that was helpful too. And that we would have people there, already built in people there that we knew, not just my kids. We know other people in the Philadelphia area. So um, it just, I mean, again, we were about to move to Chicago. One thing we really need, my husband travels all the time for business. And so we needed somewhere that had really good airport access. So Chicago was great because we had not one but 2 airports to get to.
Yeah.
And really in Philadelphia, we have several airports to choose from around the area. So it's going to be great for us.
That's so fun. And I it doesn't have anything to do with mid-century, but I've always found it fascinating. I'm such a Wisconsin girl. Even though I've lived in other places around the Midwest, like my family history is from here, and then my parents are the anchor in our household. They moved back to Madison when I was in college, and then they moved out and picked a spot in the country. And so for me, it's always been like, how much of a yo-yo do I want to be away from them? So, but I know other people who've just been like, we wanted to be in a place that we liked, that was good, where that place was, roll the dice. And so that's it's such an exciting, adventurous way to make a
Right.
move. But I can see, yeah,
Well,
for two people running a business from home, what the house is more important than a lot of other geographic considerations. And then, of course,
right.
there are some geopolitical considerations and airport logistical considerations that are still super important. This sounds like a
And
great move for
I will
you.
say we are leaving my elderly parents. They are here, and my sister is here. I don't have a large family. My parents are both only children, so I don't have any aunts, uncles, or cousins. So it's not like the people that are still around in my family are in St. Louis, and so this, except for my kids, and so this will be a little bit of a different thing. And I can't say that some of my family's happy about it, but I have to I have to have good mental peace as
Yeah.
well.
No, I mean, Wisconsin is a purple state. I live in Madison.
Yeah.
It's a struggle. It's a yeah, it's a choice we all have to make. But you've got your reason to go back for family, and there's that, and then now you're going to make a new hub, which is
Exactly.
exciting. So, what is it like? I'm so curious. I hear from a lot my clients are struggling to find mid-century-ish houses, but you are perhaps the person who has the most specific idea of what it is you were looking for, what's good, what's bad, what you can work with. What was it like to take on a housing search? What were your main criteria? What did you tackle there?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle is finding the right realtor who
Mm,
understands your vision. Like, what are you looking for?
interesting.
Because I think somebody that's really in search of an old school mid-century home is really kind of the needle in the haystack kind of thing, and realtors aren't used to working with those. So it was finding the right realtors in all of those different locations because there weren't realtors, one realtor that like obviously that could handle all those locations. So we were working with multiple realtors. In fact, the realtor we have in Chicago she knows mid-century, and I talked about her in our last newsletter. So if anybody wants to go back and look at that, they should, because if you're in Chicagoland, you need to look up Kate Sanderson. She's fantastic. But that was like kind of the first issue. And then the second issue is finding something that has been relatively untouched.
Right.
I know that comes with its issues, and we'll, I'm sure, get into that because there's a lot of things that we'll need to do on the home that we're purchasing, but there's a lot of things that we won't because
Yeah.
it has 3.5 bathrooms. Two of those are the original pink bathrooms. One of them is an original white bathroom, and the other one, it has the craziest wallpaper that looks like old newspapers. And if you're of a certain age, and I know I'm older than you, Della, but Wendy's used to have these tables in their dining rooms that were like old newspaper print, and so I just call it the Wendy's bathroom because
That's
that's what
so
it looks like.
Oh, that's great.
Um, and so like there's all these crazy things, but it's difficult to find that. And in fact, this house had only just come on the market, hadn't had any open houses or anything, and it was actually purchased from there had been a family living there since the 1970s. So it wasn't the original owner, but it was the second owner of this
Mm.
house since it was built in 56. Um, and then it was purchased by a flipper. I know. And
But
so, but that flipper decided that they already had too many houses going right now. And because they got it for a song, so they're walking away with 150,000 from what we're then paying them for it. They did have to clean out the house. It keeps makes me wonder what was in there because God knows it probably been something really cool.
might have been some very musty, very cool vintage furniture. Oh
Right,
man, yeah.
exactly. So, but that's okay. But and so when my husband and I found out that, we're like, okay, we need this house because we need to keep it away from the flipper.
You have to rescue it. Yeah.
Exactly. So, a lot of it is just darn stupid luck
That's
because that's
amazing.
really what happened to us. Once the realtor in Philly figured out what it was that we were looking for, she really understood the memo then. And when this one came up, even though she knew we had an offer on another house, she's like, I have to send this to them. And we were both like,
That's the one.
I literally remember we're standing in our basement rumpus room, my husband and I, with the phone on speakerphone, talking to a realtor, Paula, and we're looking at these pictures as she's talking to us, and we're like looking at each other going, I think we have a decision we need to make here because I think we need to call the other realtor and tell her that we need to withdraw our offer. So, yeah, I think the realtor is the first place to start.
Yeah, and it is actually astonishing. So, okay, I'll say my piece and then I've got a question, which is I'm always astonished when I am in, even in my own neighborhood, I just pop in when there's an open house and,
Isn't it fun?
I want to peek in and see what's been going on behind my neighbor's walls all these years. And again, when this happens, I'll end up making small talk with a realtor who's showing it, and they never know the word mid-century. They never understand that I'm here because I think the house is cool. Um, and I, at this point, at this stage in the game, I am shocked. I'm shocked at how few people even understand that it's a good buzzword to use, even if they can't see it for themselves. But it really does
Right.
feel like there are people out there who get it, and I'm friends with a lot of them on mid-century Instagram, but they seem to be so few and far between. So how did you go about picking, how did you search in a market for the person who felt like they were going to get it? Did you have to go through a lot of conversations to find that person in each place?
I think I kind of lucked out with three of the four. The wonderful realtor we had in upstate New York, she was actually a friend of, it was in Troy, New York. It was an area that I went to college in, so I knew it from that. And I had another friend that used to live there, and they had used this particular realtor when they sold their house. Their house was not mid-century. This is not what this woman does. But when I told her I was looking for a mid-century home, the very first home she found for me there was a Carl Koch tech-built house.
Oh, cool.
That's the first place I flew to check out. The first place I knew I needed to go check out in person because they had multiple offers and they needed the offers by a certain date.
Mhm.
And so I flew out there to see it, and it was fantastic and all original, but it was too small
Okay. Yeah,
for
for
what we
two
needed.
run from home businesses.
So exactly.
That's
So
cool though.
it was such a bummer, but I mean, it was such a pleasure to go through. And when she found that house and she saw like the things that I was oohing and eyeing over, she's like, then she got the memo and she started sending me other things that she knew I would like. There was another one it was more true. It was the don't wear sweatpants kind of mid-century house. But it had an indoor lap pool in it, which was just hilarious, but it was also fabulous, but it was a little bit over our budget, but we were thinking about it, and right now it's a seller's market, and while we were thinking about it, it went under contract that fast. I mean, things are going really, really fast right now.
Is it
So if you're
really?
looking to sell your house, now's the time.
It's the moment. It's the moment. Yeah, it's interesting. The real estate market has been up and down through the eras that I have, well, like, I guess it's just been a couple of years. It's been almost a decade since I've been an obsessive and
Right. And it's amazing that it's a seller's market because right now the mortgage rates are really high. I mean, they're as high as they were when I bought my very first house, which was in somewhat of a recession back
right.
in 95, I think is when I closed on that house. So it's interesting to watch it because like we're moving from a house where we had a mortgage rate of I think two and a quarter was our mortgage rate on a 15-year mortgage, and we're only 30,000 away from paying it off to moving to a house with a 6.75% rate, and it's worth more than what we're going to be able to sell our house for here. So we are remortgaging and going back into a mortgage and all of that, but it's worth it for us. And that wasn't the original intent. The original intent was trying to find something that we could buy with what cash we had on hand and whatever, but that was really unrealistic if we were looking in the places we were looking, so especially
Right.
the East Coast.
Yeah, and sometimes I mean that's the way with buying a house and it's the way with remodeling sometimes is there's what you want it to cost and then there's what it costs and it's still worth it to you because you wanted all the other things in addition to the price. Hopefully there'll be a come for you and for everybody else that's buying right now. Hopefully there'll be a time soon when it's possible to refinance. But
Exactly.
when you need a new place, you have to go. So I think I'm also dealing with a bunch of people who would like to sell, but they just can't psychologically, they can't give up their low interest rates. So it's causing people to want to remodel in the house that they're in rather than adjust to find the house that works perfectly for them as they are. But
Yes, and we've
yeah,
kind of outgrown this house just having both businesses in there. Like one thing, my husband and I both share an office. So right now I had to decant to another room in our house to be able to take this
Ah,
because he is on the phone when he's home. He's on the phone all the time. So in our
right.
new house, we'll each be able to have our own separate office spaces and just things like that, being able to have the luxury of having a little more space, which is funny because we're now empty nesters.
Right. So in theory, you're downsizing, but actually you're upsizing. You're changing what
Exactly.
your house needs to be. And well, I mean, you're again not alone in that at all. It's something I've been seeing more and more in my remodel projects is that people aren't asking for more bedrooms for more kids or more bedrooms for more guest space, but they need like more space for two people to work from home separately and both be able to have private Zoom calls
Right.
at the
Well, I
same
think
time.
COVID definitely
Yeah.
changed that paradigm.
I have seen people actually taking out garage space to put in office space, which is such an interesting reversal of the like more and more and more garage is what people desire when we were trying to like keep a fleet of vehicles to keep a family moving in and out of the house. And now it's like everyone wants to stay home, but they need their own zones.
Right.
So you found some good realtors, word of mouth, searching,
hmm
not
When
to,
Kate in Chicago was interesting because back really early on when we were in business, one thing we were doing was doing interviews with mid-century realtors around the country, and Kate was the one that I interviewed back in the day from Chicago, and that's how I knew her, and I knew she got it.
yeah.
So,
So you reached out to
and
her immediately.
exactly.
That's nice. Yeah. And so, finding the right person, someone who gets, I think it is absolutely necessary. Someone who is an excellent communicator who doesn't share your vision can try to see what you're looking for, but if they don't know what you find mid-century cool, they're really going to have a hard time identifying those things. And again, for you and for anyone else who's looking for original mid-century charm, to anyone else, it's going to look shabby. It's going to look like it needs a redo. And honestly, the best situation is you get matched with a realtor who knows exactly what you want, and then the house is sold by someone who does not get it and doesn't really see the value of what that is, and then you can
Right.
have a little bit of a tipping of the scales mismatch. But that person who's selling doesn't know how to put in keyword searches to help you find it. They don't know how to give good advice to the owner's kids. If that's the situation, yeah, it's easy. We lose so many great mid-century houses sort of to the flipper ethos, but also just to people who feel like they should make some changes to a house before they sell it instead of just
Right. Like HGTV has told you that this is what you're supposed to be doing.
right.
You don't keep the original features, you're constantly updating. And if you're not a weekend warrior, then what are you really doing with your life?
And I think it's one, oh God, I have in the past contemplated this, and I have realtor friends who are like, no, other realtors won't listen to this. But I'm like, could I please just like lunch and learn proselytize my way across America, advising realtors to tell people not to fix their house before they sell? How can we prevent? I feel like it's a really dangerous time for a mid-century house is the moment when it changes hands. Not even
hmm
because of what the new owner will do, but often because of what the seller will do to the house the year or the like 6 months before it goes on the market to get it market ready. And I'm like, just let it go. Just let it go into the universe. The new homeowner can ruin it if they must, but they might not do that. Leave it alone, please.
Right. That's the other thing that we've done is the realtors that we're using are actually a Svoboda Shell, and I know them from Modern STL, so the St. Louis Modern Group. They're
Oh,
realtors that work specifically on, not specifically, but they do a lot of mid-century realty, and they both live in mid-century homes or have lived, and so they know how to market that. And
yeah,
so I have faith also that we're going to find a new steward of this home that we're in now who's going to love it. And so the
right.
things that they were asking us to do, it's interesting. Like we have a finished basement and obviously a finished upstairs, but
Mhm.
the stairway in between to get into the basement just had this old crappy carpet that I had never changed and was there when I bought the house.
Mhm.
And they said, you really need to update the carpet or do something that, because like the downstairs is beautiful, the upstairs is beautiful, but this, how you get between the two isn't beautiful. So, we put in matching red oak stair treads to the red oak floors that are around the house. Or like we know the floor needs to be changed in the kitchen. We'd already put in a new floor at one point. It just, even though it was a good brand, the quality wasn't there and it shows its age. So we're going in with a really cool VCT floor,
Mhm.
which if somebody wanted to change it, we're not spending a ton of money on that because VCT you can get for about $1 a square. And so vinyl composition tile, in case you're
Yes.
wondering. And it's pretty do it yourself friendly. And so there's like minimal things like that. Or like our bathroom, upstairs bathroom is all very mid-century. It has the
Mm.
beautiful turquoise tile. It really needed some grout rehab. So I've been doing that, taking out a bunch of old grout and we'll put some new grout in. Unfortunately, it was a turquoise bathroom with a pink tub, and the pink tub has been reglazed, and so it needs to be reglazed again now. But we'll go ahead and reglaze it. I mean, the turquoise tile stands on its own. It is still a
Yes.
beautiful mid-century bathroom.
Oh,
So
that's
they
fun.
knew the little things to tell us to fix, and not like wholesale. Like you need to tear out your bathroom
Yeah.
or anything like you need to tear out your because we have the original metal cabinets in our kitchen.
Hmm.
They're like, these are great. So
And they're such a find. And so yeah, matching the cool features of your house with a buyer who's going to appreciate them is so important. And I think it actually is interesting to think about what could you do to the house that you can see right now that you want to, particularly as a homeowner who loves their mid-century home and hopes to see it maintained, to take out a question mark so that a new owner who likes it but doesn't quite know all the details doesn't say, "Oh, the tile needs regrouting. I'm going to call a tile guy and get advice." And the tile guy comes in and says, "I could do new tile in here. Subway tile is nice." And then our
mhm.
heads explode. So yeah, so you get to do the little things that will prevent there from being questions right away that allow early mistakes to be made. Because that
Right.
also, I think, from like a there is darkness in the world perspective in a mid-century house way. It's sort of horrifying when like an elderly person's adult kids tear out their kitchen and put in something awful to help it ready to go on the market. But then there's also the honest mistakes that a new homeowner will make a lot of times when they're just sort of taking advice and they're not quite sure exactly what they need to know about a place. And so the more maintenance issues and little tweaks you can take off that list at the start, the more they can just move in and like it for how it is and get used to it and start to appreciate its features rather than feeling like there are fixes to be made and then mistakes to be made in those fixes.
Right. Agreed. And I will say I have been there and I've done that too. My very first house was also a mid-century house, and there were things that I did like I threw in a pergo floor. That was in the 90s. Pergo floors were big. So I threw in a pergo floor in the kitchen. I wouldn't do that again. I know so much more.
Mhm.
I had original metal cabinets in that house. I kept those original metal cabinets. There were things that I did do to the house. I redid the floor in the bathroom, and the floor itself was beautiful. And I am sorry that I did that.
Yeah,
But
I think it's inevitable a little bit. Everyone has to sort of feel their way. I think there's two ways you can approach a house. You can dive in and make some mistakes early on, or you can pause and wait, and that's probably the better plan, but it can also lead you into a mistake, which is just waiting too long to fix the things you that don't work for you about a house. And I help people in mid-century master plans who are in both situations. But I do think when you jump in and start changing things right away, you're always going to make a few mistakes. I was just chatting with Aletha Vandermas, whose Instagram you may know,
mhm,
um, and we were both commiserating about the mistakes we'd made on our house the first year after we moved in, enthusiastically wanting to improve things, fixing problems, and taking too much advice from mainstream internet remodeling. And for both of us, it's just kind of like a checklist of things to do again now because we've got to unfix the fix,
exactly.
essentially.
And I think you and I have talked about this on a previous interview, and that is to live with your house for a little while. There's things that you have to do.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in this house that we're purchasing next week, all of the floors were covered with carpet from day one. And so they've never been finished, but they are original red oak,
Oh,
top,
interesting.
top nailed, which is a Philly kind of specialty floors. And so we're having somebody come in and refinish all the floors before we move in
Imagine.
because that's one of those things that like it is so hard to do if you are moved in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
That's refinish the floors is maybe unless they're in perfect condition, it's the thing to do before you move in the house in just about any
right.
house. Imagine though using red oak 2 and a half inch strip as a subfloor. That's That's the 50s for you.
I know,
Um,
exactly.
what did you say the house build date was? 54?
56.
56. Okay, so they were really like jumping on the bandwagon with the wall-to-wall carpet. That was pretty new material
Yes.
in that moment.
Yes. Especially because, that was still like post-war GI movement,
Mhm.
still lots of houses being built. And so it was either something that they could quickly put down like carpet or something they could quickly put down like that's why this is like a top nailed floor. Once I found that out from my flooring refinisher, I'm like, I knew this floor looked a little bit different and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was that made it different. And that's what my flooring guy said. He's like, it's top nailed floor, so it doesn't have any tongue and groove at all. It's just individual slats of like 2-inch strips of wood.
Interesting.
And so just, finding out these interesting things about your house and like how they might have done it back then. So they did that. Those top nailed floors were very specific to some areas, but especially booming areas because it was fast to
Mhm.
do. So
It's going to be so fun to learn the intricacies and the specifics of all of the history of that micro region and how it boomed and things like that. Anything else you figured out already, even in this first research process? What else is really exciting or cool or specific about your Philadelphia neighborhood?
It does have a number of mid-century houses around, but Philadelphia is pretty interesting. Even though St. Louis St. Louis was founded back in the 1700s with the fur trade. Still, there aren't houses from that early on that are still in the St. Louis area at least. And there was also the whole Mississippian culture, the mound builders back
Mhm.
in like early days. But Philadelphia has a lot of old houses, what we would consider old, like from the
Yeah,
17,
American old.
1800s,
Yeah.
American old. American old, I like that. And so it's interesting because you'll get an older house here or there, and then there'll be like a pocket of like these newer ranch homes or newer mid-century homes. And so it's a little bit different than where I am currently. And so that's been really kind of a treat to watch that. And then also regionally, and I have a little small swath of it on my house. Regionally, there's a specific type of limestone that is mined. There's actually some mines not far from the house that we're purchasing. And so you'll see this particular Philly stone like everywhere on a lot. And some houses, like the whole house exterior is this Philly stone. And so just seeing these regional variations is really kind of interesting.
That is, I mean, it is so much fun. And I feel like it's one of my favorite parts of traveling around the US is to sort of see how, in some ways, the cookie cutter, the mold of a mid-century house, particularly an early 50s, a late 50s, an early 60s mid-century house, shifts with different weather conditions and different materials that are most prevalent and and also the mix. As you get out to the East Coast, they still had a building boom. There was still a lot of mid-century neighborhoods, but there was also a lot more there was more density already.
Right.
And I think there's a little bit less. This will be interesting, and maybe you'll find this more as you go on. I get a lot less clients from the East Coast, even though we work nationally. A lot of our clients come from the West Coast, a lot from the Midwest, some from the South, but very few from the East. And I feel like even today, there's not as much of an appreciation of the mid-century buildings that there were, and there were less. The mid-century buildings that were built they were more Cape Cod style. They're less likely to be a ranch. They're less likely to be,
More mid-century colonial
yeah,
revival, very traditional mid-century.
they're trying to blend in with a housing typology that was already there, which makes a lot of sense. And also, I think they were just less enamored of the sort of new future forward vibe of the mid-century era. They were like, yes, well, but we're East Coast people. We don't like new things. But it is really interesting to see all those regional variations. And there's also, by the way, not to knock it, there's some really cool high-end mid-century architecture on the East Coast, and
Hmm.
there's lots of great ranch houses. But I do find that people don't always know or appreciate it quite as much there. So I'm curious to see what kind of mid-century community you're going to find that restore and the people who are excited about it there.
Yeah,
I
I
know
think
they're
that'll be
there.
really interesting
Yeah.
too. I know they're there, and there's a couple of great mid-century furniture stores, like restoring stores that I have been there before when I've been out there visiting my kids and things. In fact, my son's boyfriend for his college graduation, I got him his first piece of like real nice furniture, this beautiful like side table for the bedroom that is this beautiful mid-century piece, and I
Oh,
wanted to
good
start them
idea.
off right with the right stuff.
Yeah. Do your kids like mid-century or do they stubbornly want some other style?
It's funny, they like older styles, like 1800s. They're both more into that, but they appreciate mid-century. They're not un um they don't not that does I'm double negativing myself. They understand where I'm coming from. And
Right.
they
They can
love
see
this
it.
house that they grew up in too. So,
Well, it is interesting. I mean, I think it's true generationally that we always kind of gravitate to the grandparent era rather than our parents' era. And I'm fascinated to know if Gen Z is going to come up and be like mid-century. I don't know. I mean, I believe there are always people who will find it cool, but um, I had to educate my parents about this. They were like, "You want to live in a house that looks like our parents' house?" Why?
I know.
And I literally chose a
Exactly.
house with like my dad's parents' front door is exactly the same as mine, and I was like, "Oh, nostalgia!" And they were like, "Ugh, why?" So it,
I know. I've been looking to start collecting the everyday dishes that my grandmother had, which I absolutely love. Now I'm not going to remember the name of them, but I'm like, I have so many dishes already. Do I really need to be collecting more? But I'm like, it's a nostalgia thing for me because it's, it's we would go visit her out in the country where she lived, and these were the plates that we used every day, and
yeah,
so
I mean, I think it's a nostalgia thing. There's also a certain availability quality that as grandparent age group downsizes their house and has yard
mhm.
sales and estate sale, like the stuff comes onto the market. But it's interesting. I have noted, like in my youth, my parents were really into like farmhouse Victoriana, and it was
Uh-huh.
all oak and it was all like carven things and flocked wallpaper and stuff. And now that seems so musty and fusty to me. But I don't know. Maybe
I
the
know.
next
Yes,
generation will
I
like
mean, I
that.
grew up in a 1904 or 1910s four square. So, yeah, that's
Very
kind of
fashionable when we were young. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
exactly.
Well, it is interesting. And ironically, the house that I remember first was actually a mid-century ranch house in northern Indiana. And it was all done up in like a farmhouse style. They had like wallpapered it and whatnot. But I'm like, oh, the things I could do with that house. It had two floor to ceiling, wall to wall fieldstone fireplace walls in different places. And I'm just like,
Oh,
I could make
uh-huh,
that house shine. I have no idea what's happened to it since we moved on, but my
right,
mom thought it was boring and bland and didn't like it.
uh-huh. I know. Well, we all have different tastes, and I know we've talked about this before. I'm always a firm believer too that while this is your house while you're living in it,
Hmm.
you are really just a steward of this house because
Right?
these houses, by and large, or if you live in an older house, it's going to outlive you. It's going to go on to another person who's going to live in it and love it, and it will be their home. But
And I
we have to
think,
remember that stewardship.
yeah, and I think we personalize houses. They should be your home, but thinking about what's going to work best for that house is so valuable because you're never going to turn a mid-century house into a cottage. No matter how much you remodel and no matter how much you put shaker cabinets in the kitchen, it's not going to look like a cottage. If you love a cottage, that's great. Get a
Right?
cottage. They're great houses. They're very charming as well, but you don't need to turn a mid-century house into a cottage, and also you can't. So, yeah, thinking about leaning into the bones of your house, whatever that is always a good idea for its own longevity. And to think about it, like, yeah, the stewardship of it. If you do too many weird things to a house, you're going to make it hard for the next person to love. You may actually do damage to it structurally as well as character wise. And it's
Hmm.
just, yeah, it's just frustrating to see that kind of disconnect that people so often do when they try to apply fast fashion trends to houses that were built in a moment and are kind of from and for a particular moment.
Exactly. And you will get me going on the whole cabinets, kitchen cabinets. So
Oh, you
in
must have seen
in
some things.
I have seen so I am scarred. Let me tell you, I'm scarred for life. But if I see another shaker cabinet in a mid-century kitchen, I'm gonna flip my lid because they're just so ubiquitous, so they're easy to go to the home store and purchase. But even like places that I would see online that had been more meticulously renovated, not restored, that had these shaker cabinets that couldn't have been inexpensive, but they like were so wrong and they looked so wrong. It's not hard. You can find a flat face, flat panel
Right.
door.
And in fact, most of the it's not like the shaker cabinet style today is structural. It's a slab door with a brim glued around it. You know, it's not actually composed of five pieces like an original shaker door would have been.
Right, exactly.
So, what are we doing here? No, and I've actually, bless their hearts, I've had clients come to me and say, "This new slim shaker style, have you seen it? Is this a mid-century shaker?" And I'm like, "No, it's just the latest trend. It's just trendy
Right,
shaker. It's just 2025 happening. Please have a slab
exactly.
cabinet."
I've been doing a lot of research because I will say, out of this house we're purchasing, all the bathrooms are original, a lot of original wallpaper, all the original floors, some original light fixtures, some great original light fixtures. But the kitchen was redone in like the 90s. And so
Okay.
it's going to be a complete gut. But so I've been doing all this research and I had a lead on a set of metal cabinets and I was like an hour too late to like make the purchase. It was like heartbreaking at first. But I've been doing more research and like trying to find a cabinet maker that can make a birch cabinet. So
Mhm.
finding somebody who works with birch, because that would be a very mid-century material, and finding somebody who can do eased edges, because even though flat panel doors would look perfect in like a really high-end contemporary, more mid-century,
Yeah.
um, the mid-century cabinetry that you would see in more of the kind of everyman's kitchen often had it was face frame and the doors would have like a little bit of eased edges on them and they
Yeah.
would be birch and have that kind of reddish, kind of like the hue of the door behind you.
Yeah. Well, and then
So
probably back in the day they would have been pine, but modern pine doesn't behave like birch. So, or at least in this region, we would have found this all in pine. And I have my original kitchen with cabinet doors that match, and they are plywood with eased
uh-huh,
edges. And
uh-huh.
they're lovely. They're beautiful. And the grain is continuous from the top all the way to the bottom. I can never remodel that kitchen. I can't change the layout of it because actually I have been considering if there's a way that I can steal a few upper cabinets and arrange but like I want to die in a house with these cabinet doors in it. Like
Right.
I can't possibly sacrifice them. So, yeah, so I mean it is a challenge and I will be very curious to hear what your journey has been. Have you found someone that you already know can do this, or are you still hunting for
I
that
found
person?
some place that I think has the ability to do it. I haven't reached out yet. That's kind of one of the next things on my list. It's just a matter of, doing all the floors.
Yeah. Step there. Start
It's not
that's
cheap.
step one.
It's
No.
a lot of money. Anyway, and so whether the kitchen gets redone sooner than later, but I'm going to reach out and find out some more information. I'm lucky in the fact that I do run and have my own business because there are vendors that will carry this company's products, but I think I can reach out and work directly with the manufacturer because it would be a business to business transaction.
Nice.
So just and so believe you me, everybody will know about this manufacturer if it does turn out as well as I think it could be expected, because it could be a really good find for people looking to put old looking cabinets in their kitchens.
Yeah, that's
Like
an amazing resource.
it seems like you can find, I mean, not a lot, but you are able to find metal cabinets on a fairly regular basis on eBay, on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever,
Mhm.
because those you have to disassemble those.
Right, they're so sturdy. Like you can't,
Right.
I mean, you could landfill them, but they're so chunky that I think people understand what they are
Well,
in a
and
way
then
that they're
but
willing to
wood cabinets,
put them
though,
up.
people just come in with sledgehammers
Yeah.
and take them out that way. So you don't find vintage wood cabinets that you
Right.
can put in your kitchen.
Well, and also, my understanding is that, I mean, the metal cabinets obviously are units, but a lot of mid-century kitchens that are wood were site built. And so you can't remove them from the wall. You really only can get them out of the house by smashing them up. And if you want to salvage something from like, you could take all the doors I have cried
Right.
over a set of cabinet doors from a neighborhood mid-century kitchen in a landfill, thinking, could I do anything for them? I can't. I could climb in this dumpster and get them all back out again, but what could I do with them?
I have been known to
Um,
climb in a dumpster or two.
yeah, yeah. I was sorely tempted, but you can't like it's not like the boxes exist like a modern cabinet install. So, but for a metal cabinet, yeah, those exist. They would be costly to put into a dumpster, and so I think people do sort of say, "Does anyone want these?" List them on eBay, on Facebook
Although
Marketplace.
people have realized
Now they
that
know it's worth
there's,
something.
yeah, because there's some crazy ones out there right now on eBay that are in terrible shape, rust filled, whatever, and people are asking like $5,000 for three cabinets, or I mean, but then there's some people that are reasonable. So,
Those are just going to go faster. I mean, my dream is always to find like a GE Wonder kitchen that has its original upper wall refrigerator in it, and
yes,
then
I
what
love
do you have to
those.
then build a house to put it into, or find the perfect match of house and that. But yeah, are you still in the hunt for metal cabinets? Is that your ideal choice? Because you lived in now two houses with metal cabinets.
Yes, I have. I will have to. I want to try and see what these wood cabinets would be like. I think it. I mean, the cabinets that I found that I missed out on by an hour. Um, my problem was I was catting it all up because architect, I can't stop that. To try to see if I could make them fit in this kitchen because they were
Right.
made for like a three-sided kitchen, and my kitchen is more of a galley kitchen style, so like trying to make it work. But anyway, they were like $3,500, whereas a full kitchen of
Right.
newly made wood, all wood cabinets, I imagine are going to cost me upwards of that.
Yeah. Yeah, they will. Especially because all of the simple, I want it to be plywood. I just want nice routed edges, all these pieces that should make it very simple and nice are actually so unexpected these days that they are custom special offers, hard to get.
Right.
But you are a purist and you want something that's going to fit the house and feel perfect for it. So I have confidence that you'll eventually find the right solution, even if it
I
takes
may
a little
not
bit
be a
longer.
complete purist. I may surprise some people, we'll see. But
Well, I'm so excited to see how it turns out. Did you tell I already know. You mentioned before we started recording that you're thinking about documenting your process of this house.
yes, if you're on our mailing list, you'll know I wrote about this last in our last mailing list on May 1st. But we are planning, I do have a YouTube channel for Make It Mid-Century. It's just at Make It Mid-Century on YouTube. And there's just two files up there now. One is just our introductory, who is Make It Mid-Century, how are we formed? And the second one is actually a how-to installation guide that we did for Vintage Camper Trailer magazine about how to install plastic laminate or how to make plastic laminate countertops.
Oh,
And
useful
so those
information.
two are on there, but the goal is to then work with this house and be able to show you all the progress from start to finish. And it's not going to be, just a couple of months. It's going to be several years because not only there's room in the house right now for us to both run our businesses, but my business part of it's going to have to be in the garage for now. And my goal is to build another building on the lot that we're going to call Bebop the Shop. We already have a name because here in our house here we built a shed, but it's only 8 by 8, but it's just for gardening implements. But it's a really nice shed, and his name is Fred.
Oh, Fred the Shed.
Fred the Shed.
That's
So
adorable.
we've named this new one that we're thinking about Bebop the Shop. So
I love it.
it will go as far as eventually making Bebop, building Bebop. So
Well, that's really fun. And I think such a resource to people because there's a lot of how-to video out there. And there's even some good how to make mid-century choices for your house video out there. But for the most part, people who are documenting their home improvement process are making a lot more HGTV choices.
mhm.
And also often it's the sort of energy that you often bring to a remodel when you're doing your first remodel. And therefore, part of what you document in that process is your mistakes. And certainly I didn't video document, but I did reasonably aggressive blog documentation of my process of getting into this house and making changes to it. And then I have scrubbed some of that information from the internet, and some of it I haven't scrubbed yet, but I sort of think about it all the time because I don't want people to do what I did. I want them to do better
Right.
than what I did. I want them to do what I would now advise them to do. And so you get to be in this position of having really steep yourself in the lore and learn from your own mistakes and now come back and do it right, do it
Right.
over. That's really
And I think
satisfying.
it'll be interesting because of the fact, like for example, the white bathroom that we have, it's white tile, 4.25 by 4.25 tile with the gray, or not gray, brown speckle in it, and you
Oh,
even I
fun.
can't get that. I have been trying to get that. You just can't. Nobody makes it anymore. But the shower is leaking, and that's one thing that we need to do. So I'm going to have to take the entire base of the shower out, but I don't want to have to take the walls out. So, can I very carefully remove the tile in such a way that I can either reuse the tile or remove them only up to a certain height that
Hmm.
then I could replace it with something
Something friendly.
complementary
Yeah.
that would work with it that's also mid-century. So I think there'll be some interesting stuff in there, real world scenarios like what am I going to do? Somebody else, the flipper that we're purchasing this house from, he would have gone in there and ripped the entire thing out.
Oh yeah, started with a sledgehammer. Absolutely.
Right. And so how do I do this? Oh, I can't think of the word, but how do I do this really thoughtfully and preserving as much of the original mid-century characteristic as I can? Now, I can add back in mid-century, and that's what the kitchen is going to have to be because
Yeah.
it'll be new mid-century.
Hmm.
But I want to preserve the mid-century that's there.
Well, and you're in a great spot to do that. I would love to be able to show people your example because these days, and depending on what contractor someone chooses to work with, when I have clients, if we have major plumbing issues in a bathroom, I have to warn them that we're probably going to lose the tile. Not because it's necessarily 100% a certainty that it must be lost, but because to find someone who's willing to go to the effort to preserve it while making the changes that are necessary is sometimes an impossible task. But it would be
Right.
so good, even for someone who was going to hire someone, to be able to say, look at this YouTube video. This is how it was done. It can be done. Can I pay you to do this for me? And also to let people, I think there is so much actually that if you're careful and you're thoughtful and you have a good example, you can figure out how to DIY. And so, I mean, of course, you know this. You sell kits to people who want to be careful and thoughtful and have an example and DIY something. This will just be one more way you can build that world of people who
Exactly.
can
I want
see
to
it and then do it.
empower people. I think that's the thing. I did a whole blog post all about the DIY movement was like a big thing in the 1950s, and I want people to channel their inner 1950s DIY person. And it was because like back in the day, you were working on a farm, you
Mhm.
worked sun up to sundown. You didn't have time for these like silly things like renovating your home. And once people came home for the war, people weren't working the same hours. They were working more office jobs,
Mhm.
things like that. They had this spare time on the evenings and weekends. That's when DIY really got to be a thing. And that's when you got like power tools for the everyman, handyman person. That's when the rise of DeWalt and all of those brands really happened.
That's
It's
fascinating.
it's really quite fascinating, and so I like to encourage people that they too could channel that and really, take on some harder things, but maybe start a little bit easier, reupholstering the seat of a chair for your dining room, something like that. But I want people to know that it can be done. Finding a realtor is one thing, but finding a contractor that'll actually work within your specifications is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that is the real challenge. I
yeah,
think
there aren't
also though,
craftspeople anymore. I mean, I think that's a sad truth is that it's about the money, it's not about doing a good job. I don't know if anybody else was for some reason on my feed on YouTube, I've been getting a lot of home inspectors that are inspecting these like 600, 700,000 $1 million homes, and they are so bad. So bad.
I mean, this has been true. This is as an architect. I mean, I love mid-century style, but part of the reason that I work in mid-century buildings and remodels is because I think that was kind of the last moment going into the maybe the 70s that we had a combination of the kind of quality of building materials and the quality of craft universally or typically, I mean,
I
I
would agree. Yeah.
growing up in the Chicago suburbs in the mid 90s, I was watching a huge building boom of McMansions going in. And I would go over and visit my friends' new houses that their parents had purchased and be like, that corner's not square. There's a hole in the drywall there. This is a brand new house. What is happening, and I would like I didn't know didn't know I was a tiny future architect, but I was just blown away by how
But you knew it was
cruddy.
wrong.
Yeah, it was like the most expensive house in our community, and it was completely made of ticky tacky, and I just didn't understand what was going on. So I think that's just, yeah. And I don't want to tar all contractors with the same brush, but I do also think that we have a lot of fast gathered materials, there's a lot of pre-manufactured stuff, and there's not a lot of incentive to have people learn the kind of craft and spend the kind of time. Labor is expensive, materials are cheap. We just
Yes.
get
Well,
cheap
and I
things
think
and stick them in
as a
willy-nilly.
parent, I'm also, subject to this. Like it was very important for me for my kids to go to college and get an education and whatever. And so we're not putting the same emphasis on trades and on learning actual physical skills that you do with your hands
Yeah.
than we used to. And I think we're losing. There are still people out there that have these very special gifts
Yeah.
and abilities, and unfortunately, they aren't able to
Not being
find the
nurtured.
people to pass it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my sister just remodeled her kitchen and bathroom, and as it happened, the contractors that did the work, they are not mid-century people, but she managed to sort of bully an example and show them and ask again and again and get a quite a nice mid-century modern update kitchen out of them. But one of the things they were able to do was they had a guy who did hand plastering. So he did the like
Hmm.
clamshell pattern across the ceiling, which she had in the rest of the house. And he was about to retire. He was like months from retirement when he did that project and had an apprentice who was working in the process who had then quit and wasn't doing it anymore. So no one was going to replace him. And it was just lost.
Yes, there's so many
My sister
lost
said
arts.
he was a little crusty, so maybe it was a little bit his fault he lost his apprentice. But also, it's like we don't have the system anymore, and it's so frustrating because yeah, and but you're right. There are bigger social movements afoot. AI is not going to build a quality mid-century kitchen for you, nor is it going to design one, frankly.
No,
But
no.
I've been really getting into. I just traveled to England recreationally, and I got really obsessed with the public housing projects that I was seeing there from the mid-century, which is
Hmm.
amazing and stunning. And so I was like, well, how did this happen? And where did these come from? And why don't we have this? So I'm getting the social movements and like the history of the labor government right after World War II and the combination of the National Health Service and the welfare state and what we were doing right after World War II, which was a little bit of a movement of public housing projects, but it was really, our Puritan work ethic just like couldn't help shaming the idea of needing any assistance whatsoever. If you couldn't bootstrap yourself, well then F you. And then we lifted up all of these GI Bill white individual single family home workers and suppressed everybody else. And we just put all of our money into property rights and not into keeping people fed and sheltered and making spaces for kids to flourish. I don't know. I find it really frustrating, but it's so tied in with sort of social opinion and political movements and who won and lost some election
Hmm.
that we don't
History,
remember.
it's fantastic because if you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. Now, I hated history as a subject in like high school, and I never took it in college. But
Isn't taught
like now,
properly.
I find myself like super interested in the history of stuff, and that's one thing that I want to do with this YouTube channel is like not only like in redoing this kitchen, well, historically, what were kitchens in mid-century? How did they evolve throughout, come from like the 40s to the 70s? What
Hmm.
were the changes? What kind of like down to like the differences in cabinets or like what kind of faucet you might have seen there. So I think historically it's really interesting to kind of understand how and where things came from. My examples weren't nearly as intricate or socially aware as yours, But still, I think the history part is something we can't, as being big mid-century enthusiasts, is something we can't ignore.
It all ties in, and there's I wouldn't even say dark pockets. There's a lot of darkness in the background of the mid-century housing movement in the
Yes.
US. And as much as I love a cute little single family home on its cute little island of grass. It's also probably, in my professional opinion, the worst possible way that you could house a family. We should be closer together. We should be closer to social services. We should be, taking up less space, having more green space. But it is fascinating to think about how we got here, and knowing that, what do we want to do from here? Like, how can we advocate for changes or returns to different zoning policies? How can we bring more density into our existing communities? How can we take care of the mid-century housing stock that we have that's smaller and better and denser than what came after?
Hmm.
And, how do we make the world a little bit better than it is right now? It's always
That's
a
right.
challenge.
One step at a time, Della.
Yeah. It's a process. It's a long process. And I guess it's both positive and scary that history is fast and slow, but it keeps happening.
Yes. I always say somehow the sun rises in the morning every day. It just always happens. Another day.
Does. And it's about to rise on you in Philadelphia. So when do you make your move?
Well, we close next week, but we will not physically move. We'll start to move some of the things out of this house so that we can stage this house for sale. Because mid-century furniture just finds its way to me. I don't know how it happens.
When
And so
you
we
become
have,
an obsessive, I mean, I think we just turn into we get a little magnetic and
I
iron
can't
filings just start to
in my
accumulate.
living room, I have found 3 chairs just in the alleys, just abandoned, that are beautiful. So like I can't not take it with me. So we have more furniture than we have house right now. So we'll be able to decant some of that to the new place to be able to make this house look a little less cramped. And then we're thinking hopefully end of summer, August area, that will make the permanent move. But until then, we'll be going back and forth and all that kind of stuff, which is why I have to put my business on hiatus, because not only am I moving my personal life, I'm also moving the business. And then I have to also register it with the state of Pennsylvania, register it with the township that I'll be living in Pennsylvania, get all that set up before I can start selling again and all of that. So there's
Get
a lot
everything
of work on the horizon.
right. All the I's dotted, all the T's crossed. So when this podcast goes live, you will already be offline. But hopefully people will be able to get great kits from you again soon and shop your website.
Yes. So I'm thinking somewhere in the August area we'll probably be down for about 3 months.
Here's what to do. Make sure that you get onto the Make It Mid-Century email list. Are you still going to send out your monthly emails?
Still send out a
Excellent.
monthly email on the first of the month. So hopefully we'll have things to talk about since we won't be working. But
We'll have
I imagine
news. Yeah.
we'll still have news.
You'll have house updates. So I cannot recommend enough Susan's wonderful first of the month emails, which are always chock full of really good advice and fun stories from some of the people who've used your kits, and just great bits of history and mid-century features. They are a highlight of every month. So if you're not on her email list already, I don't know why you're not, but go do it right away.
And then come follow us on YouTube so that you don't miss when we start posting about the new house. So that is at Make It Mid-Century.
I am looking forward to seeing that. Oh, fantastic. Well, congratulations on finding a house that's going to be just right for you. And I'm so excited to follow along on this endeavor and see how it goes.
Thank you. I am super excited. I am already tired.
I bet. I bet that is a feeling you'll have in common with a lot of people who've been through this experience. And if you're looking
Yes.
forward to this experience, anyone, if you're planning to buy a mid-century house, this is what it is.
That's right. There's highs and lows with everything. So
All right. Well, marvelous. Thank you again for coming back onto the Mid Modern Model podcast. And we'll have to do this again once you're more settled to hear how it's all been going along.
yes, when I actually have my own office so I can have a discussion with you with like cool things in the background.
Yes. Can't wait to see how you set it up. That's going to be really fun.